What's good with y'all, boys? Man, welcome back to another Ray and Kyle Everything Sports podcast. We had a big weekend in college football, so we're going to start off with our top 10. So, who do you got at 10, Ray?
What's going on with y'all? Had a couple of losses, going to shake some things around. Going to start off with 10 back-to-back weeks for me. I'm holding Alabama up here. Looks good again this week. They're starting to pull it together. Jalen Milroe starting to pull it together. That's the biggest thing for them. We were wondering if he was going to be able to. Now he is. They were moving on. Number 9, I've got Texas falling to Oklahoma. Bumped them down some for me, but still believe in Texas, believe that they'll see Oklahoma again in the Big 12 championship. So going to leave them right on the edge at 9. For 8 for me, USC, they took Arizona to triple overtime right after coming off a real close game to Colorado. So I don't know how much of we can believe in this team with their defense. They're coming through when it matters. We know what Caleb Williams is, but I think we're mostly basing our decisions off this team, off Caleb Williams. I think that's why this team is as hyped as they are. So I think we need to come off them a little bit and start to realize, like, hey, yes, this team's winning, but they're having a lot closer games than some of these other teams are, 2 teams that they should be. So I think we need to start realizing that this USC defense is a problem, and their offense isn't as productive in every stage of the game, especially like we saw in the USC game versus Colorado. They weren't as productive in the second half as what I'd like to see them. So need to watch them going forward. They have a tough Pac-12 schedule. They got a tough game this week with Notre Dame. We'll see how they end up.
Number 6, you look at it, I mean, their defense is a huge problem because you see what happens when they get off to slow starts like they did this past week. I mean, they almost lost to Arizona team they shouldn't have been close to. So if their defense doesn't show up 100% and Caleb Williams didn't put on his cape, you know, they're going to lose. And that's why I've been losing this week, actually. But go ahead.
Number 7, I got Penn State. We're seeing what Penn State is doing. I think their biggest win for me was against Iowa. That was a really impressive win. Even though we know Iowa's offense is terrible, just still being able to shut them out is still a good thing. And being able to put up 31 points on a decent Iowa offense. On a decent Iowa defense.
Cool.
Next up, I got Washington. We see what Penix is starting to do. They also have a tough schedule coming through. They're beating teams like they should be. But the biggest question mark for me is how are they going to stack up against some of those powerhouses in the Pac-12, like USC, like Washington. Like Oregon and teams like that. So we'll see them getting to come up and get some good competition now that we're going down, getting halfway through the season. You're going to see that conference play start some more. Then at 5, I do have Oklahoma. They showed up really well for me this week against Texas. I didn't expect them to win, but now that they did, I think we really need to start watching them. I think they were like 12 in the AP going in this week. So I think eyes were on them. This game happened, and they showed us something against Texas, who has already beaten Alabama. So now we're looking at a team that's already got a quality win that got beat. So that makes that win even more quality. So I like this Oklahoma team. I think they're going to win out for sure all the way through the regular season, and they're going to rematch Texas in the Big 12 championship. And I got them beating them again.
Yeah, I could definitely see them winning out. I don't think they will. I think they will beat Texas in the championship game. Like you said, I do have Texas winning, but I mean, Dylan Gabriel, he proved a lot. I mean, last year he couldn't play in this game. They lost 49-0, you know, and fast forward this year, that drive to win that game was something serious. And I feel like that's just going to, you know, really vault Oklahoma because, I mean, them and Texas both have a really non-existent schedule these past 6-7 weeks. So I'm curious to see, you know, that Big Ten championship game.
Next up for 4 for me, the highest ranked Pac-12 team I have is Oregon. This Oregon team looks good. We saw them in comparison versus Colorado with USC. They coming off a bye from last week and just destroying Stanford the week before like they should. But now they got a tough 3 games coming up. They've got Washington this week. That's really going to be the test game. It's going to determine who's in the lead, who's in the running for that Pac-12 championship. Then they've got Washington State, who's also a very good team. And then they play Utah. So, I mean, 3 really tough games. If they can come out of these 3 games 3-0, and if, dare I say, they come out winning these games convincingly, especially this week, this Oregon team is going to jump up. They could be number 1 in the rankings. I mean, to come out against Washington, and if they beat them convincingly, much less beat them at all, we're really going to have to start thinking Bo Nix Heisman winner. Yeah. We're going to start really watching that Oregon team. My thing for me this week is can Bo Nix show up in the big games? We haven't had to see him yet. I mean, Colorado was a big game, and he did show up, but nothing as much as for what it means for this game, as far as the playoffs. So we'll see if he can show up, and we'll see if that defense can do anything.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like you said, too, about the Heisman, I mean, this game is gonna really, project out the Heisman and really who's kind of separating from the pack because Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix, those are the three guys right now that I'm really looking at. And as you know, Caleb Williams hadn't played a big game, which he will this week, but there's two of the Heisman favorites, showing facing off against each other. But like you said, if Oregon can, get a dominant win against Washington, I mean, it'd be a serious leap from them to go. I think they're 9 in the AP4 8 to go, to 5 or 4. That'd be a serious jump. But I mean, depending on if they win and how they do it, they definitely could. They definitely have the talent to do so.
Next up for me, I have Michigan. This Michigan team is destroying teams like they should be, but the issue for me that I can't put them any higher than 3 right now is, yes, they're destroying teams, but they're destroying teams they should be. So that's why they're 3 for me. They look efficient, but I'm ready to see them in about a month play a Penn State team who's got that defense that's really going to see if they can test that offense. And they're going to have an offense in the opposition that can actually test Michigan's defense. We haven't seen Michigan really tested on either phase of the game so far. So whenever we get to see them against the good teams, and then especially the last game of the regular season, we get to see them against Ohio State, we're really going to get to know how this Michigan team is.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing what great teams do. They're beating the bad teams or worse teams, convincingly. So you can't really give them credit for that, but you also can't take anything away from them either.
Next up for me, I have Georgia. Huge win for Georgia last week for me. Showed me a lot. I was big on the Kentucky team, and they blew them out. From the jump, everybody knew that Georgia team was better. But this Georgia team is starting to pull it together right when they should. I have them at 2 right now. I can see it getting higher. I don't think this Georgia team is going to get tested going forward all the way until the SEC championship game. I think they'll end up playing Alabama. I don't know that Alabama is really going to be I know they're pulling it together, but I don't know if they're going to be complete enough to really test Georgia in that game. So I think Georgia has a pretty, I don't want to say easy because I know it's the SEC, but an easier run than some of these teams, especially if you're looking over in like the Big Ten with Michigan having to play Ohio State, and especially if you're looking at like the Pac-12. I think besides for Florida State, I don't think that besides for Florida State, I think they had the second easiest schedule going forward.
Yeah, I mean Georgia, this is like their biggest game they had to play, and they had their best performance. So, I mean, I have the Dogs 1 still. I mean, me personally, I don't see how you could, especially with the way they handled Kentucky, a very good Kentucky team. It was also 5-0, came off a dominant win against Florida. But I mean, Georgia and Carson Beck, because I said last week that Auburn game, I feel like really gave him confidence and really gave that offense confidence, just what he was able to do. So, I love Georgia and where they're at right now, and they're rolling.
Next up for me, I have Ohio State. I think this Ohio State team has showed us the most so far. Maybe besides they've proven themselves as much so far. Maybe not as far as if you look at them against Oklahoma, because Oklahoma just came off that big win versus Texas. But I feel like Ohio State has continued to prove themselves. They had that big win versus Notre Dame, who I know Notre Dame just dropped another game to Louisville. But that's a good 6-0 Louisville team, too. We can't forget about them. So I don't fault Notre Dame too much for losing that game because that was a good team they lost to. It's not like they lost to a Stanford or an Arizona or some team like that. So I do still think that Notre Dame win is credible, very credible. Then they went and played a good, high-powered Maryland offense, held them to 17 points. That's a big thing, is that we know what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball. We know those Big Ten offenses, but we're looking at these defenses, and these defenses are holding teams. Maryland to 17, Notre Dame to 14, Western Kentucky to 10, Indiana to 3. I mean, we're looking at some really, really good showings from Ohio State, and I really just, from all stages of the game, I like them right now.
Yeah, I mean, my fear was them, coming off that bye week, but before coming off their biggest game of the season, beating Notre Dame, just starting off slow. And they did start off slow, but I think they proved themselves because, I mean, championship teams, they can kind of turn off and turn it back on when they want. So the fact they were able to pull away from Maryland how they did, late third and the whole fourth quarter, I think that really shows them. So I do like Ohio State as well.